how can we share with people, especially new pilots, how to recognize that either procedurally or cognitively to know when, all right, stop.
Mhm.
Like some people don't even recognize it feed. Like some people they keep continuing to go down that path, even though it's a bad path and only bad things can happen from it. And they don't recognize it somehow. Like, how do we share with young pilots, either Dr. Stamp, from a cognitive standpoint, what
Yep.
are triggers or something that you can say, well, wait a minute. All right, just stop, slow down. I
Yep.
mean, if you're not in the air yet, it's easy to do that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what's some points we can give people?
Yeah, I'll give you the cognitive side. Feed. I'd love to hear your response to this, because here's what we always do on the cognitive side, and it is and it's a layer you both have been hinting about for the last 5 minutes, and I'm excited to bring this up. And it's the concept of, what do you say to yourself, right? What's your self-talk like? And I love it. I wrote this down. When you talk about these task shed moments, right? You start shedding these tasks because your brain's getting filled up. And the question really boils down to is, what do you say to yourself? Now, here's what we always tell people, especially when in my simple world of having to get in front of an audience, right? People still get stage fright and they still get the writer's block. And the first thing you have to do is, you can't feel the emotion, because emotions don't cause results. Issues and events cause results. The data from the issues and events will inform how you feel. That comes after. The emotional response comes
Mhm.
after you've organized what the events and the issues are. So if your self-talk is not positive in terms of reinforcing the issue, and not like, not like rainbows and unicorns positive, but positive in terms you understand what you know and you understand your actions. Because here's the thing I would do after this event, Brian, is I would get up in the plane. I would counsel you to say, well, you know what? That was a ride. Because every time you're in the plane, it's a different ride. And the more you make good and not so good rides all be just a ride, they become part of the average, right? It's not outside your comfort zone because you did do the right response. So what you do want to do then is, when you get back down on the ground, go, well, that's a ride, right? They're all a ride until they're not. But the key part about it is, when you then get a chance to unpack it, you say A went to B, B went to C. Okay, I understand where that exists. Now I can feel the emotion, but that's in a safe place that has nothing to do with you operating in the moment. But most people, what they do is, something happens and they respond emotionally and then go, how should I respond based on my emotion? That's just discipline. And I know we live in a world of sensitivity and all that stuff today, but there is what we call mental fluidity. How do I flip between rational and emotional thought on purpose? And that's why you can't over dramatize, like, I pushed it today. I agree with both of you. The minute I have one of my students goes, yeah, I crushed it today, I'm like, dude, you're going to get crushed, because you've already scaled what that response was, and it's just elevating the situation. So you can't over dramatize the negative and over dramatize the positive. It's just a ride, right? Every day, new day, having the ride. And so I like that notion of, you have to practice healthy self-talk, just like you practice good cockpit management and good flight management.
Totally agree, Dr. Stamp. That is very well said. One thing I would say is, you think about it, no matter your experience level, it doesn't matter if you're single seat, it doesn't matter if you're flying jets, if you're flying Cessnas, gliders, commercial aviation, stealth fighters, it doesn't matter. Helicopters, anything. There's no such thing as a perfect flight. You
Mm-hmm.
will screw something up. And the day you don't tell yourself, the day you come back and you're like, man, nailed it, no questions. That's the day you need to take an internal look and be like, all right, maybe I'm leaning too forward in the straps. Back to your question, Brian, how do we give knowledge and experience to those that are flying and in our profession? As we say, there's no such thing as a perfect flight. You need to look deep inside yourself and be like, I understood. You break the flight down. You got pre-flight, which is way into the admin side of the flight, right? So we're sitting in there in the FBO, we're in your briefing room, and you're going, all right, do I feel prepped for this flight? Because piss poor planning is going to produce piss poor results, right? So if you go, man, complacency started to sneak in, dude, I've done this flight 100 times. We're just flying up to Orlando, or we're just going, whatever. It's going to be a nice day. That's when something is going to sneak up, bullseye nose high, and it's going to nip you in the butt, right? When you didn't even expect it's going to happen. So if you take apart the flight in the admin portion, where you're going through your paperwork side of the house, and you properly prep for that, You properly prep for the pre-flight of the airplane. And then all of a sudden, there's a lot of unknowns before you ever even got in the air. Now, when you're in the air, you're like, oh man, how do we get here? All of us that have had lots of flight time can think about that and be like, man, I actually kind of took a micro nap. How do we, who are we talking to? Where are we going? And you're like, dude, I've done this so many times. But it's tough because you have to fight complacency. Just a quick plug for the Blues there is that's one thing that we do while we fly throughout the demo season is we actually fight complacency by lowering the altitudes for the demo throughout the year, because we're talking 200 feet above people's homes. You take 50 feet off of that, life gets real fast, real quick, because you're like, oh yeah, I'm used to seeing treetops right below my airplane. But now when you're at 150 feet, now it's a totally different regime. Jet reacts differently. Things are closer. Trees are going by faster, like all these things. And as you get experience at 150, you slowly lower it down a little bit more. And that continuously fights that complacency to be like, all right, I know we've done this flight a million times, but we're going to continuously fight and try to get better, because there's no such thing as a perfect flight. We'll debrief for hours and hours and hours after a demo, even though we've done it a million times. We're like, all right, guys, what did we do wrong today? I didn't do this right. I didn't do this right. I added too much power here. I had too much wings in the pole. I didn't add enough power coming over the top, and I had too much wing wobble here. Like, we'll talk forever. And that's at the pinnacle of my career. So I take that experience and I come back down to normal life here. And I'm like, all right, how can I tear this flight apart? And what could I have done better? And as for the newer aviators, if you actually sit there and say, it's not just the flight portion that you want to tear apart. It's your brief, it's the taxi game plan, it's the flight plan, it's coming back down to the approach. Did I taxi back? Did I do anything wrong there? Did I miss a radio call? And be very, very, very hard on yourself. Because if you start to task shed that stuff, you're like, man, the radio call doesn't matter that much, right? Aviate, navigate, and then what? Communicate, man, it's the third on the list, man. That's when you're really starting to have things sneak up on you that you may not expect.